As football was changing, the way it was reported would have to change too. For the Scottish fan in the 1980s, there was still only one paper that meant the beautiful game: the Daily Record. But two former Record reporters, Jack Irvine and Steve Sampson, had jumped ship to their tabloid rival, The Sun. Their mission? To smash the Record and grab their readers. It was a rumble in the tabloid jungle, with round one going to The Sun.
It was a genuine, old-fashioned, wonderful, circulation-building, ram it right up them scoop.
It was a story that would scare the pants off the Record.
The sports writer's face went absolutely chalk white. We'd wiped the floor with them.
It was unfortunate the way it happened. It sort of stuck it up Celtic.
There have been big stories, but nothing comes close.
It was the defining scoop.
Mo Johnson had sold his soul and his jersey. And this is how it all happened.
It was being in the right place at the right time. Graham Souness had phoned me up and he said, I hear you're going out to Spain. And I said, yes. He said, well, I've got to go out for a week to see my kids. He said, do you fancy sort of chumming up? And we'd laze about the pool, we're just chilling out, go out for dinner each night and have a few bottles of wine.
So over sangria and chips, what exactly did Graham and Jack say to each other?
Every night Graham would say to me, and he kept asking me this night after night after night, do you think Rangers should sign a Catholic?
If the question had left Irvine in the dark, then what an office junior told him on his return to work would switch on a light.
I saw a fax in my girlfriend's house last night that had the name Maurice Johnson on it. My girlfriend's father handles the insurance for Rangers, and of course the penny dropped. So I immediately phoned Souness's mobile and I said, do you remember all these conversations we had, you know, over a few bottles of Rioja about signing a Catholic to Rangers? And he went, yeah. And I said, it's Maurice Johnson, isn't it? And he said, in the great Hollywood tradition, print it.
Mo, never afraid of making a fashion statement, had only 2 weeks ago worn his heart on his sleeve. His Celtic sleeve.
I'll finish my career here. I don't want to play for anybody else, so I don't want any speculation about me going anywhere else. I just want to play for Celtic, and that's fine.
But for Irvine, there followed an anxious wait to protect the story from getting into the hands of his competitors. He needn't have worried.
I seem to remember phoning our London office and being told, don't take it too seriously, because it just seemed so remarkable that a guy who had effectively signed himself to Celtic for a second time should then do the U-turn and head over to the other side of the city.
The sub sitting on the desk at the Daily Record who said, look, when he received a phone call on this matter from a punter, had said, the story is untrue, and if you ask me in 10 years' time, it will still be untrue. We've heard all this before, and hung up.
That morning, the Sun ran with a world exclusive, while the Record splashed with their big story. Poor Kevin, abandoned at the seaside.
We were euphoric at the fact we had the story, but we were absolutely dumbfounded when we picked up the final editions of the Record in the morning and they hadn't gone with it. We just couldn't believe it.
We're delighted to report a major sporting story.
And even at the press conference at Ibrox that morning, the Record and the rest of the Scottish press were still in denial.
One of my sports writers, Jim Black, was there, and Jim was sitting up the back, and a lot of the opposition papers were saying to him, you know, your editor must be mad running that story. And he said he was watching the Record sports guy's face, and Souness walked into the room And then who walked into the room but Maurice Johnson? And he said the sports writer's face went absolutely chalk white.
Oh, Maurice. Wow. Everybody knows who it is.
That was the real turning point. That here was this tiny staff on a newcomer, new kid in the block, and we'd wiped the floor with them. We got the story, and I think from that day on, the record kind of lost heart.
The Sun kicked off a new kind of football story not seen before in Scotland. Not so much about who was signing up in the boardroom than who was touching up in the bedroom.
We're putting excellent sports stories on page 1, which, you know, about the misdemeanours of Rangers and Celtic and Hearts and Hibs, and, you know, every player that was up to nonsense, we were virtually in the bedroom with them, you know. So we did all that kind of stuff, and it got the punters talking, and people were talking about us in pubs and supporters clubs.
They've changed the way that newspaper reporting is done. There's no doubt about that, and it'll never go back to the way it once was. But I don't think that's necessarily for the better.
Come on, just keep on
The record had never done that kind of story. That was a godsend to us, and we got stuck right into it. So I suppose we're a kind of early version of Footballers' Wives.
I think people want to know about the football. I, for one, and thousands like me, are not particularly interested in the wives, girlfriends and various horizontal jogging activities of football players.
But scoring on and off the field is what would now sell papers, and the record followed suit.
It's what they want. It's a customer business. If they want to read about it every day, we'd be daft not to give them it.